Welcome to the Shopify Happy Hour. On the show, you'll hear from Shopify founders, operators, and experts about growth, marketing strategies, lessons learned from the trenches, and other nuggets of e-commerce wisdom shared over a different drink or snack each episode. Today's guest is Cassie Maschhoff, co-founder of Lottie's Meats, a sister-owned brand bringing chef-crafted pork sausages and ground pork blends to the modern table. Born from a multi-generation Illinois family farm, Lottie's is making pork fun, responsible, and delicious again. Cassie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the kind intro. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, first, you're bringing some lovely festive energy. It's early December. We're right in that period between Thanksgiving and holiday season, Christmas time, Hanukkah, all that stuff where it's like super busy, but you're bringing the festive cheer. I'm loving it.
Yeah, I'm trying to. It's a fun time of year for us.
Nice. Good stuff. Well, let's get started with obviously key thing is we got to try the sausages, but also sounds like you've got a tasty beverage. I've got a tasty beverage. So in honor of the holiday season and for having you join, we got to crack it. So why don't we talk about what you have there? What are you about to crack open?
Oh, well, I just poured myself actually a nice glass of white wine from Scribe Winery. Do you know it? It's in Sonoma. It's the only one I'm a member of. So trying to flex that. Pairs really nicely with sausage, I should say.
Perfect. I love the plugs.
Yeah.
My wife is from Napa Valley, and I guess there's so I'm from New York, so there's like a New York, New Jersey rivalry that people talk about, right?
Yeah.
Then there's like Sonoma, Napa. So I got to be careful about saying anything.
Well, my sister went to culinary school in Napa at the Culinary Institute of America, and our products are in Nugget Market and a few others in that Napa Sonoma area. And I actually had a meeting with the Nugget buyer today, and he's like, "Oh, you and Chelsea are doing a lot of demos at our Sonoma market," because we're always fighting well, we'll go to this region and we'll do the demos there so that we can hang out. He's like, you're over-indexing in the Napa region demos, our strategy.
Well, hey, you got to mix business and pleasure. I mean, that's a key part.
Right. Yeah, it's a tough industry, as you know, so we reward ourselves where we can.
Fantastic. And you said the winery is Scribe?
Yeah.
Cool. I'll have to check that out.
Awesome.
So that's great that you're about to enjoy a nice, tasty beverage. I've got a beer called Lunch from Maine Brewing. Maine makes delicious beer, all sorts of good stuff. They have really good stouts, and their lunch is an IPA that's just perfect all the time. Should pair perfectly with sausage.
I have to check that out. Lunch.
Nice. Yeah. Are you a beer fan or mostly wine or?
I am, and I've become more of a beer fan since we launched our brand March of 2024 in Denver, Colorado. It's part of the job description, I feel like. So spending a lot of time there, you have to be.
Nice. Another perk of the job. Well, cheers. Happy holidays. And thanks for being on.
Yeah, excited to chat with you.
All right. Fantastic. Well, yeah, that's a tasty beer every time I have it.
Yeah, this is the most fun podcast I've done already.
I think we just wrap it up right here and call it.
Yeah. No, it's so fun.
Nice. So full disclosure, so I typically try to reserve tasting for podcasts when it goes live, but we had to reschedule a couple of times. And there's one time where I had everything prepped and we had to cancel last minute. So I couldn't let the sausages go to waste. And I will say that they're pretty dang tasty.
Yeah, aren't they?
And on top of that, some of the sausage, one of the guys on my team, I had him try it. He used to work in a restaurant and he said that best sausage he's ever had by far.
Wow.
I've got two. Yeah. And he knows food pretty well. And he's also going to be editing this video. So we'll speak very kindly about it.
Ooh, yes, he will.
So I've got two links here. I've got, I think, the regular, and then there was more the spicy version. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, we have, so our two sausage links, one is a bratwurst. It's a very traditional take on a bratwurst recipe. It is just pork shoulder, mustard seed, ginger, and nutmeg. It's much higher protein, 40% less fat than the leading sausage brand. So we love it because the pork really shines. And we often hear you can taste every single ingredient. The other one we have is called the Lottie. That is our signature. It does have some warming spices. It's very special because it's made with only pork loin and pork shoulder. So unlike most sausages, only the best cuts. Then it has some nutmeg, coriander, paprika. It's smoked in some peach wood chips. So we often say it's our big kid hot dog, if you will, but much more decadent and elegant.
They are both fantastic. And
Yeah,
I think the adult hot dog is a very good description because it is just so much better. And yeah, it's much more complex, and you can tell it's very high quality. So well done to
yeah,
your sisters.
yeah.
Talk
Thank
about,
you.
before we go into the history of like how you guys started this, I mean, how often do I get to ask how the sausage is actually made
I
with
know.
sausage?
I can tell you've been waiting for this moment to ask.
So,
We will tell you.
so what's the, just like as a food nerd, what's the process? How does sausage actually get made?
The process is so long and convoluted, but because we make it hard on ourselves, it doesn't need to be like that. But we grew up on a 6th-generation family pork farm, as you mentioned in the introduction. So it's really important to us to source from that family farm and network of family farms that we grew up on. So we have 100% traceability into every single production run. So from the top of how it gets made all the way to the end, it's a long process. But we have to work with 2 different USDA co-packers, which is a whole challenge in itself. One for the ground product, one for the cooked product. We send them the cuts. Like I said, we use only pork loin and pork shoulder, and then really special, unique spice blends. So most sausage will use powders, artificial ingredients. We use only like grade A maple syrup, real Calabrian chilies that are imported, wet minced garlic. Then that is going through a ton of R&D, packaged, sent out to you all to 2 different warehouses. So lots of steps, lots of, we've gone through like 9 different co-packers in our short like year and a half of being a little business. High quality standards, I should say, by the chef sister.
Gosh, I'm sure. So I'm pretty stoked that I just figured out how sausage is actually made. Well, that's
Yeah.
wonderful. So let's talk about the co-packers. So what were you looking in a co-packer, and how did you discover things weren't kind of up to par with what you were looking for? And how did you find, hopefully, the co-packer that you've landed on that hopefully will be the one that is kind of meets all of your needs?
Yeah. So for us, like I said, we have to work with USDA co-packer. That limits the search in general. I think when we started searching even the USDA website, it's like all PDFs, it's like hard to navigate. It's like glitching and crashing. And we were like, how are we ever even going to get this started? Sausage is so concentrated at the top with big players that kind of own all of the facilities, or there's like really, really small mom and pop shops in certain regions, that maybe have their own line. They're starting to co-pack. So that's how we started. We started in Denver with a few local folks, but we quickly outgrew them. We go through so much back and forth because most of them are making sausage one way, might be using a lot of like trimming knuckles, hence why you don't want to know. And so that was really challenging because we would have our special recipes. We'd wanted to use these certain things, certain techniques of, okay, it needs an ice bath at this time. It needs to be cooked at this time, very like chef crafted techniques. And so that was the challenge of we were being told this is how it should be done. And we wanted to say, hey, we want to elevate pork sausage in a different way. Can we try to craft it like this? And so I think through that process, ultimately at the end of the day, if someone wouldn't meet our quality bar, there wasn't any point in trying to recreate what has already been done. So oftentimes it was a lot of like, okay, we'll never be able to follow this recipe or this technique. So we have to go back to the drawing board and try to find another one. So yeah, I think now at this point, 18 months in, we are with partners that we think are there, but you never know. Times are changing. It's it's crazy out there with, tariffs and like everything. I don't know what will happen in the future. I think one thing we're thinking about is about, are we always going to have to just have backups and other options? I don't know. What do most brands that you talk to, is everyone always in like up and down co-packer highs and lows?
So operations is tough for everybody, I think.
Yeah.
And it really just depends on the category and brand. There are people we've had on the podcast and other brand owners I'm connected with who they land with a co-packer, or let's say factory or manufacturer if it's more of a hard good, physical good, and they'll be with them for years and years and years. I know people who got really lucky right out of the gate. I also know people with lots of nightmare stories and have had to
Yeah.
constantly. It really just depends on the brand. So I know you mentioned
Yeah.
something that's important for anybody who's kind of starting or wants to get into direct to consumer, CPG, what seems to happen is when brand owners are bringing their idea to a co-packer or manufacturer, the facility will often have their process, right? And so brand owner might go to the co-packer factory with an idea, but the co-packer factory will have their steps that they want to follow because they want to systematize, they want to be super efficient, but that might not lead to the best quality. And it certainly won't lead to differentiation because they're going to try to bucket you in with everybody else that is running on their line. So now after
Yeah.
going through, let's say 9 different co-packers, looking back, were there any signals or red flags you could have caught earlier? Like what tips would you give to somebody who's at the beginning stage and they're trying to find, let's say, a co-packer for their new brand? What would you have them watch out for when they're approaching co-packers, or what are the green lights? What are the things where you'd say, oh yeah, if they say this, then you know you're in good hands?
Yeah. I think going back to what I was saying of knowing what are your non-negotiables and knowing when you are the expert versus knowing when to defer to the co-packer as them being the expert. Oftentimes they hopefully will be the expert, but to your point of differentiation, I think there's a fine line of knowing when to trust your gut, which I kind of hate that advice. But now being in this industry for 18 months, in hindsight, I'm like, oh, there are times where we should have just trusted ourselves. But when you're new to CPG and you're in this antiquated system, it's so easy to just default to like, of course, yeah, this is the way. So I've always tried to enter these co-packer conversations being as open to their expertise as possible, but also trying to be incredibly organized, really buttoned up and showing we are new. Here are our strengths. Here are our core competencies. Here's what we will not sacrifice on. And if you stick with us and give us a shot, because as you know, you're not going to meet the minimums. There's so many things, but here is our potential and here's our path, our projections, I think has really helped us grow quickly and play in these very concentrated markets where we're often the smallest one, but we've been able to like get on that level because we show the differentiation and what those core competencies that I was mentioning are. And I think that gets co-packers excited of like, oh, okay, well, this will diversify my revenue streams and this will add value here. So trying to put on that hat has helped us
Very,
survive.
very smart. Talking about what's in it for them. Very
Yeah.
smart move. So, okay, well, let's start at the beginning. How and why did you start Lottie's Meats?
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned, we grew up on a 6th-generation family pork farm. When we were growing up, our parents said, maybe don't be hog farmers, try something else. We were like, okay, thank God. No, I'm kidding. But actually, Chelsea and I were just talking about this. When we were younger, we were always like, oh, yeah, of course we'll be on the farm. But I think candidly, we saw how hard it is to be a farmer in America throughout the 80s, these 2000s. And I think our parents, for diversification purposes, were like, go out and try your hand. Who knows, where this is headed. So Chelsea went into culinary, as I mentioned. I fell into tech. But as we left the farm in the Midwest, the more we were like, whoa, pork gets a bad rap. Was no one else like force fed this their entire lives? And we noticed on menus, grocery store shelves, there was no like premium, elegant pork products. People thought bacon, you think processed, you think kind of boring. There's a whole backstory there. And so we had kind of thought to ourselves, if anybody is going to reintroduce a kind of packaged, processed, stale category in a way that's chef crafted, really clean, but convenient and almost like gourmet, maybe we should give it a go. Chelsea had started using our family's pork in her restaurant in Denver, and she was making sausage using only the best cuts, doing some pop-ups at breweries in Denver. I was just helping her on the side, not planning to leave my safe, secure tech job. But I don't know, there was something of like, you know what, it's now or never. And a few people had given me the advice of don't half-ass it, pardon my French. But they're like, just go for it. If you're going to try to do something, do it. So we're like, let's give ourselves a year, 2024, the year of Lottie's. And at the end of the year, I can always go back to corporate America. You can go back here. But I do think that there is a food service, retail, and kind of direct to consumer play that we can try and give ourselves some time to see if it resonates. Fast forward to now, end of 2025, we're always like, wow, that went great. I guess we'll give it another year. So that was the genesis. And then it was kind of like, let's take a risk and give it a go and see if we can keep going.
Love it. Love it. Well, I think founder story makes a huge difference in so many different businesses. And I love that one, the story of the heritage of six generations, right? On an American family farm, and then two sisters where you've got the culinary side to speak to the quality of ingredients. And that clearly shows in the taste. It's like super, like some of the best sausage, if not the best sausage I've ever had. It's super tasty. And then you can come
Thank
at
you.
the kind of tech and business side of it. And I love that story. And I love that that is how you're going to market because it's true and it should resonate with people. So I love that.
Yeah. Thank
Looking
you.
back on 2024, let's say, what were some of the big wins that you had that made you say, okay, this is a thing. We're going to do this for, let's say, at least another year going into 2025?
Yeah.
Were those signals that helped you make that decision?
Yeah. So we didn't get our products from our first co-packer until March of 2024, which was actually pretty quick considering we both like I quit my job January 1st of that year and was like full on Lottie's. So we had dropped off a few samples at local retailers in Denver, Colorado, and like started with like 12 stores. We did a farmer's market that summer. We actually launched into quite a few restaurants selling the ground product to top bakeries, pizzerias, and kind of built like a mini market in Denver where we would find, hey, I tried your sausage on the menu at Get Right's. It's my favorite bakery. Now I know I can get it at these 12 places. We did a ton of pop ups. So, like at breweries, restaurants, menu takeovers. And those were always like a lot of lines. We just built like a little mini proof of concept and community and like family, if you will, of advocates that like turned into like lifelong customers and allies. And I think looking at the end of the year, we had just started getting outside of Colorado, like bigger momentum in NorCal and even in like Chicago, Milwaukee area of distributors and chains that wanted to bring us on. So then we were like, okay, there's a path to like 3x in 2025. Let's like start on that path.
Wonderful. So as you were talking, I was eating more sausage and I got to know how the recipes
Please.
were dialed in. With lots of brands early on, there's just tons of consumer testing where you're going out, you're getting feedback and you're iterating, you're dialing in recipes and you're trying to land on something that people really love. I'm curious if that process even happened with your sister's history and knowledge of culinary. Did she just make these and she was like, hey, this is it, and then people loved it? Or was there lots of testing going on? How did
You,
that process work?
before Lottie's was a real consumer good, I guess I should say, there was testing. Like Chelsea, I have an Instagram post on our pinned on our profile that's like the sausage bite that made me quit my tech job. You can check it out after this. But she had actually, when we were talking about this, she's like, I've been working on these recipes for years. Like always in the restaurant, she was perfecting and tweaking. And she had done some sausage around Thanksgiving that she like low key called our Thanksgiving sausage that now became the everyday. That is the perfect balance of grade A maple syrup, sage, and thyme. So it's kind of herbaceous and a hint of chili flake. And same with the Calabrian, we say it's like expertly seasoned because it's like a pinch of brown sugar, Calabrian Chilean oil, garlic, oregano, fennel. Everything is just like dialed in at a Michelin quality that we had kind of known when we were going to launch. Like we wanted two ground products to be innovative, like expertly seasoned recipe in a bag. And then we kind of wanted familiar enough classics of fully cooked links because both would be convenient and both would be like familiar enough, but an edge above what you're used to seeing. So I will say it was low key kind of in the background for a while. I think over the last year and a half, we've been constantly collecting feedback though in stores of we'll hear a lot. Can you make this ground version in like a spicy link? Or would you ever do ropes? Or would you do chorizo? So we're trying to kind of think about wrapping all of those up while staying true to our values for adding two more products to our set. So that's kind of the goal, adding two more.
Nice. Yeah, you could always do kind of short term limited release and
Yeah.
just test that, once each quarter, roll out 2 new flavors or I guess styles or formats, and
Hmm.
then do that for a year. You could roll out like, let's say you're doing one a quarter, you can knock out 8 different ones, and then end of the year, be like, which ones took off, and then you can turn that into more of a regular occurrence. But that's what's great about D2C is so D2C, you
Yeah.
really see the data around who's buying based on all that stuff and what the conversion rates are looking like, but also when you're in person at breweries or talking to people who are trying stuff, you'll get direct feedback that way.
Totally.
Awesome. Okay,
Yeah.
so it sounds like dialing in the product was not super difficult because, well, I'm sure it took time, but it was kind of before you launched because those recipes have been
Yeah.
done for years.
Yeah.
So your shelf,
Scaling the product had been the challenge. And actually, I think that's why we haven't expanded our product line beyond those 4 flavors since March, April of 2024, because we have gone through different co-packers. And sometimes we're like, wow, if we can't even nail these to our standards every single time, I think that's what's a little bit tough about a perishable short shelf life. I should mention everything is made very fresh. Like the cuts of pork are so fresh with the best ingredients, and then it's immediately flash frozen. So we're stored and distributed frozen to extend our shelf life. But once they are thawed, or in the meat industry, it's called slacked. I don't know if that's colloquial. I didn't know that until I joined the meat industry, but it's often like slacked out. Slack to sell is the program that a lot of retailers use. Then the shelf life shortens tremendously. And that is also really challenging in terms of, just getting it out there to people in a way that maintains quality. So for anybody facing any of those issues, I'm always happy to chat, but it limits, I think, the ability to be as agile as we'd like to be and that we are in other facets of our business because we're focused on exceptional quality and taste over everything else. And then like a sound business. So we're kind of, we're constantly thinking about, we have so many challenges against us in a cold supply chain, that if we can ever get our cogs down on volume breaks and finding those economies of scale, like let's try and do it. And so that also obviously limits some risk taking and innovation, but it's a balance.
yeah, you definitely have a lot more challenges than, let's say, other CPG products that are shelf stable and can be shipped and
Yeah,
kind of stay fresh and ready to eat for a long time.
totally. Like
So
we're doing production monthly. And I know other brands that are like, yeah, we do it once a year. And it's so easy to, get those up there. So it's a dance, but we're hoping to reduce that in 2026, but who
nice,
knows?
nice. So let's talk about distribution. So how are you selling your product?
Yeah.
What are you seeing across different channels that you're in?
Yeah. So in 2024, when we launched, we were kind of split a third, and a third across retail, direct to consumer, and food service. Fast forward to 2025, our distribution really started exploding, although I don't know if I can say exploding because in CPG it's all relative. But we added like 6 distributors in retail in 2025 in NorCal, Pacific Northwest, St. Louis, Midwest region, and SoCal. And then also some larger food service distributors like US Foods to service some larger breweries and things like that. So the dial really turned up on retail because we could start shipping pallets much more efficiently than you talk to frozen perishable brands on D2C a lot. It's really hard to get the economics right without passing on exuberant amounts to the customer. And so we've been focused there a lot when it comes to retail and trying to ride that wave. That being said, now having a year of like we call it like real retail experience, it's so tough. I didn't know that the trade retail game was so hard. Why didn't you tell me? It's just, yeah, it's tough. I think, again, making sure the product is date coded correctly, merchandised correctly. Sausage Wall is competitive with so many other brands. Luckily, we stick out a little bit on shelf because our packaging is like brighter and speaks to some of those unique attributes that makes us us. But fresh department in retail, just as tricky as frozen D2C shipping.
So, okay, so you've got DSC, frozen shipping, you've got retail. Are you doing any, we were talking before the call and you mentioned you were not always following the typical CPG playbook. So is there anything outside of that you're doing to get product into hands of consumers?
Yeah, I think, in both 2024 and 2025, we really show up in person as much as possible, whether that's doing something fun like a Lottie's and Pilates event where people can get, or we did like once a squats and brats gym event. But, we're trying to show up as much as possible. We've done farmers markets our first two summers, which I think we'll always do, just as part of like being engaged in the community. We do a lot of menu takeovers at top restaurants. We're trying to partner with restaurants and other small businesses that can contextualize our brand as much as possible. When we are in store, we really prioritize spending on demos and brand ambassadors over some things like a price reduction, because with meat, this I think is one of those things where we're often told from brokers or consultants, you have to run like this kind of promotional strategy and you have to do these things. But when someone's often sees like a price 30% off on a fresh meat product, are the behavioral economics the same as when they were consulting, these other types of brands, not in our category? I think that has been challenging for us, going back to the advice I gave earlier of trusting your gut, even though I don't like that advice. But in hindsight, I'm like, you know what? We should have known that we don't, we're not like these other common CPG categories. This is its own niche thing that we're trying to do. And so showing up, I think, in the ways that we want to show up rather than spending on this like retail newspaper ad, or doing these things is not necessarily like something that we want to prescribe to a degree.
There's got to be a big market for going after select restaurants that are a perfect fit because, farm to table obviously is a thing. But if there are restaurants where there's not good supply for your product, then having a frozen option going directly to restaurants across the US for like, Michelin restaurants, super high end,
Yeah,
got the street cred with your sister's culinary chow,
totally.
the product, that could be a really interesting play where you're kind of blending D2C, but then also getting in restaurants, so it'll be higher volume.
Yeah.
So I wonder if there's a play there. Anything in the food service category?
Yeah. Yeah. So right now, food service is 15 to 20% of our business. And for those reasons that you mentioned, I think the value add for restaurants is there is a brand behind it if they want to put it on their menu. It is expertly seasoned and crafted, so it saves time on labor. Plus, it's something that if people are starting to familiarize themselves with our brand, they know that the quality is there, and vice versa. We can reap those benefits from our amazing restaurant partners, where we're getting new customers that way in a way that is so naturally contextualized to what we want people to take away from the product. It's the best. We have done some really awesome collaborations and pop-ups that have turned into always on menu items with pizzerias, bakeries, and breakfast sandwiches, breakfast burritos, obviously breweries and things for the links. But the challenge, I think, with food service is you have to find the restaurants that have the willingness to pay for the quality. They are in just as tough, if not a tougher business than CPG. And so for us, we need to figure out, I think this is a learning that I just have come across. How can we price our food service products to be more competitive in that channel? I think when we started, I was like, oh yeah, retail food service, like perfect. We're going to go for this margin and this and this. And there's so much I think you need to test to get it right for food service. And then the distribution system within food service is just different than retail. And like learning that ecosystem has been interesting the last few months. I will say then though, once you can get in, it's the best. It's just hard, I think, to find the right price and the right partners. Then it's like magic.
So how have you landed some of the restaurants that you're in?
I think, as you mentioned, with Chelsea's amazing network and reputation, we're so fortunate that that's how we could start. And then, you start small, as with anything. I think, a degree of FOMO of like, okay, I see this. This is where I want to stand. And, some brands I think do this really well with partnering and supporting the restaurants and like being so involved in that ecosystem, like Zab's hot sauce. I had the privilege of having a call with Miles the other day, who was so helpful in terms of like this is how we approach these restaurant partnerships and this is what I enjoy. Same for Chelsea and myself, but that's her superpower. She knows how to talk the lingo. She knows what the value add is, and she's not selling, she's like partnering with them. So I think for any brands trying to get into food service, I would say don't fall into the trap I did and try to approach it so corporate and like with a retail and like head top down, process, but really try to partner and empathize with what restaurants are trying to do and what they're trying to build.
Sounds like a very smart approach. So for your online e-commerce, obviously shipping frozen product across the US and trying to keep costs in line with where consumers are expecting, even with a product that is extremely high quality, how are you thinking about e-commerce and also digital, organic, social, your overall digital marketing? And how are you looking at that versus retail versus food service?
Yeah, great question. Because I mentioned so much of our in-person, offline advertising are in certain regions, there's always going to be so much of the country that we're not able to hit. And that's, I think, where digital marketing obviously comes into play and why we have D2C. As I mentioned, it's hard to stand up. We have to ship everything with dry ice via 2-day air or less. And we spoke to every single third-party shipping app and like UPS and FedEx and finally got on like a UPS, the best like rate we had been able to find with the right box dimensions and weights to like make it work. It was like a labor of love and months of testing and being insane like I am. But it paid off because we're able to offer it in a way that we still make a small margin on it. Because one thing we didn't want to do is like just go through all of it for the sake of getting it out there. It's not one of those products that is like easy that you can like constantly send samples, but we wanted to make sure that we could offer it. So when it comes to digital marketing, we lean heavily into social where we can. Our strongest channel is probably Instagram, but we have TikTok. We're active on like LinkedIn, even Pinterest and things like that. We also have a really strong email marketing list that converts. So we're setting up as much automations as we can there, in addition to using apps like reviews, and like upselling and things like that where we can. We haven't put any paid media or paid social behind anything, only because of what I mentioned. It's not a top channel for us, but we want it to be there. We also haven't, I'd be curious to your thoughts on this. We haven't invested in any like PR, but I'm always like, especially this time of year, you're like, that would be so nice to just get a little shout out, Food 52. But yeah, we haven't invested a lot in any paid digital. Long answer is we want it to be there to try to reach where we're not going to be able to physically be present.
Nice. So, yeah, so thanks for sharing all that. Makes complete sense. I think for PR can be incredible. PR has kind of evolved over the past, let's say, decade, right? Where it used to be just getting a media mention, but now media mentions can help with SEO. But now what's more important than SEO is AIO and GEO.
Yeah.
Like, that can the robots understand that Food and Wine referenced Lottie's meats, which means that you're going to be more likely to show up in conversational queries.
Yeah.
Anything from media mentions, but then also platforms like Reddit can also be super helpful. So PR, I think, PR can be incredible for any brand. The question is like, how do you get media mentions in a way that isn't stupid expensive?
Yeah.
And I think that's the challenge for some brands, but there are ways that you can make that more efficient.
Yeah.
So we can talk about that
point.
afterwards. There's a couple of people that I can connect you with for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a big challenge for lots of brands is how do you get these media mentions? One idea that could work that I know brands have done, and we've done for certain brands, is like you can use influencer as a first step to get to people. So we had one of our brands on the Today Show months ago without even trying to do that. It was through seeding product to different influencers, having them talk about the product in a certain way, and then through that channel, there was somebody who's doing a bit on Today's Show, and she was connected with some of the influencers that we were connected to and seeding product to.
Wow.
If PR, I think, is like it's a part of marketing, and if you're doing the right seeding, you're saying the message, and also just sending product to the right people could be able to do that. You find find the top 25 media companies that you want to be placed in and connect with either editors or people who have done reviews on products that are in the same category, not necessarily the food category, but the quality, and
Mm-hmm.
seed product to them. Something good might happen there. So like
Totally.
handwritten note about founder story,
Yeah.
maybe even video that you're sharing, cute
Yeah.
a specific video with you and your sister talking about it. That could be kind of interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. We have started gifting creators and influencers that we admire, going back to our strategy of how can we partner with brands, partners, people that really can contextualize our product in a way that we aspire to. And that has worked really nice, only because it's already so expensive to get the product out into them that it's hard to then also budget for like, okay, and we're going to be able to hit your $100,000 spend. But I think to your point of when you can kind of be selective, and we, I think, are fortunate to have a really, really lovely tasting, fun to cook with product that oftentimes we have turned those creators into just like natural advocates that we will hear oftentimes. I normally, when I'm gifted, like don't have time or I won't post about this, but like this was just so fun and so exceptional to cook with that I felt inclined. So that is something in 2026 we do want to try to budget more for, because it just hits like a few buckets, and maybe we'll be like your brand and show up on the Today Show if
There
we
we
do a
go.
good job.
Nice. Yeah, I think hardest challenge for most brands is if the product doesn't meet a need and the story isn't one that is likely to be shared, where people will be, Seth Godin talks about remarkable being something worthy of remark, right? And so if your
Hmm.
product doesn't meet that, if it's not solving a true problem and the story doesn't kind of make it natural for people to be inclined to want to share that, that's when marketing is really tough, right? If it's
Yeah.
trying to sell the same product that everybody else has, marketing is really hard. PR is really hard. But if
Yeah.
you've got a product that cuts through the clutter, it solves a problem, it's different, and there's a really cool origination story, everything gets easier. And if you can communicate that to people who are already talking about food, it
Yeah.
makes it a lot more likely that they're going to share the love about Lottie's meats, even without large spend behind it or anything like that. I think some of the best influencers out there and the best influencer partnerships are ones that are just completely organic, and people have
Yeah.
tried a product and they're like, I love this thing. How can we work together? So
Totally.
yeah, I think there's a big opportunity for what you're doing with that. So,
Yeah.
okay, awesome. Well, let's move on to the speed round. So each answer about a minute or less or so. Cassie, are you ready? Feeling good?
Yeah. Feeling great.
Good stuff. Let's get to it. All right. So what is one of your most recommended books?
I just read, I think it's called Still Bobby. It's Bobby Brown's memoir. It just came out, I think, a few months ago. And I've been like thinking about it often and just recommended it actually to my sister, because it's her whole journey of a lot of no's, obviously building a brand while being a young woman and then a young mom. And then now, if you know her story, in her 60s, she had a non-compete with Bobby Brown. She launched Jones Road. And so it's talking about launching this business, at this stage of her life. And I loved it. I would recommend it to anybody who's, building, whether you're in a corporate track or your own track. It's just like you learn a lot about resilience. So I would say that it's now becoming my most recommended book as of right now.
Nice. What is an under the radar product or brand you've used and like, but most people don't know about?
Well, it was just Small Business Saturday, so I was thinking a lot about like some of the brands that I bought and supported. I bought and gifted to quite a few brands this brand called Shuka Sauce. Have you heard about it? It's a new woman-owned brand out of LA. I just met them at an event maybe like a month or so ago, but I loved it. It's like a shashuka starter, and it has like a nice tomato base with some like garlic and cumin. So it's obviously amazing in shashuka, but you can also use it in like pastas. And it was just like lovely. I gifted it to like 5 people this past weekend.
That's amazing. I didn't know
Yeah,
what
it's really
shuka was,
fun.
and then some
Yeah.
friends to visit, and they cooked it for us, and it was ridiculous. And then I was in Israel and has shishuka, and I was like, how have I not known about this my whole life?
You'll have to check them out. It's like, it's so, again, I think it's brilliant in that it's already expertly seasoned. So you just add like an egg, or you just have like a very elevated meal in seconds. And that's like one thing I love about our product. I am not a cook, I should say, at all. But I love the ability to like, okay, we could just make some Calabrian meatballs with a pasta noodle and a sauce. And all of a sudden I have like a very elevated spin on a classic dinner. And so that's why I love that product.
Great recommendation. What is one thing in life you do better than most people, just natural,
Mm.
and how do you do it?
Oh my gosh, I don't do anything better than anybody. Maybe delusion. Cause like I think I do. I don't know. I think you probably hear this a lot and you know this. You have to have a lot of stamina and grit to do small business CPG life, I think. And over the last year and a half, when I've been doing like hundreds of grocery store demos in like a cold meat department on like a beautiful sunny Saturday, and I'm like laughing, crying, I have kept doing it because I will often be approached by other customers, that are like, oh, I had a business for 40 years. And they're like, you just need to keep going. Or like when you're about to quit, you just always hear, you have somebody like coming and like cheering you on or like falling in love with the product. And it helps you keep on keeping on. So I think having maybe a borderline healthy, if it's such a thing, level of delusion is maybe one thing I do better.
Love it. I think that's a key ingredient for anybody who's going to be successful, especially in CPG or e-com.
Yeah.
So tell me about your favorite shopping experience, online or offline.
I also just gifted and bought One Trick Pony, the peanut butter brand. Do you know them? Well, Lucy, the founder, and I have become friends because she has just been really helpful as we were starting our journey. And they have like very nice, like build bundle, super easy, like click. You can tell they're using all of the Shopify apps and just like build out in a way that is really, really simple, but was like so nice and easy. Like a lot of variety, but like very simple. So her like online, in fact, I texted her and I was like, "Oh, how do I do this?" But it was really nice.
Awesome. Who is a brand founder we should have on a future episode?
Well, honestly, maybe her. They have been like growing out. Her name's Lucy from One Trick Pony. But I also just connected and I've been chatting a lot with a woman named Susanna from Jenny's House. They're a focaccia bread mix. They just launched in their first retailers in SoCal and do some D2C brands. So I would say either of those like female founded brands because they're both a shelf stable brand. Jenny's House, the focaccia brand, does some like mixed stuff, but also some frozen stuff. So a lot of interesting dynamics and both at different stages in their journey. One a few years in, one new. So any of them.
So we're going to go a little bit off the grid because you've mentioned like 7 different amazing food brands, it sounds like. So what's in your cupboards? What are you usually eating? What's a typical dinner?
Oh my gosh, I think that's one of the best things about CPG is like you find so many friends. It's the most like collaborative industry I've ever been a part of. Granted, I only grew up in agriculture, tech, and now CPG/meat, if you want to, however you want to define it. But I love the community of fellow founders in CPG. It's one of those things I think that helps you keep going. So a few things that I have been drinking a lot besides Scribe wine is we love Huxley, the energy drink. It's like a natural energy drink. It's like 70 milligrams of caffeine. Also started by a former Culinary Institute of America graduate, Simon. So Huxley is like loaded nonstop in our fridge. I also love and am obsessed with Real Z, the date, peanut butter filled and almond butter dates. I don't know them, but I have a crush on them and I would love to I would love to know them. No, but their dates are so nice. And then the other one that we're always buying and gifting, also former chef started. Maybe this is the key, Dan. CN Chilies. It's a hot sauce brand, also Latina and woman owned, and the best hot sauces ever. Always stocked.
I think we found a key is that every food brand needs to be
Yeah.
or chef, and then everybody's
Maybe.
paying.
Or like those are ones that you could trust because there's something about a chef that they wouldn't let something go out, if it wasn't good. So you
Yep.
can trust.
Nice. Where can people connect with you to learn more?
Well, they can follow us on Instagram at Lottie's Meats or on our website at lottiesmeats.com. And if you reach out to info@lottiesmeats.com, you'll find us.
Awesome. Cassie, thank you so much for bringing Lottie's Meats to market, a brand that's redefining what pork can be through quality, flavor, and family roots, and sharing your expertise and insights with our audience on the Shopify Happy Hour.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun. We appreciate it.